What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, we are going to be talking about 3 players that I think we should be selling in Dynasty Fantasy Football leagues. Now, sometimes you get players who find themselves in tiers that maybe it just feels a little bit awkward. None of these players I'm going to be talking about today are players that I think you have to sell off of your Dynasty Fantasy Football team because I think they're going to lose a ton of value or because I think that they're bad players. It's more so that I just think there's an opportunity to tier up off of these players and get into a safer, better, higher range of outcomes type of tier. So we're going to be talking about 3 players, like I said today. Without wasting any more time, let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about this first sell. All right, so the first player I'm talking about today is going to be George Pickens, wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. You look at him over on KTC right now, he's currently the wide receiver 10, and in startups, he's being drafted as a third-round startup pick. 25 years old, so he's a young player, not necessarily worried about the age by any means, and he's coming off of a 2025 season where he played in 17 games, had 137 targets, 93 receptions, 1,429 receiving yards, and 9 receiving touchdowns. He's coming off of a monster breakout season this year. But I do think that some managers are overvaluing Pickens as a Dynasty Fantasy Football asset simply because of how fun he was to watch in 2025. We have to remember that Lamb missed time this year with some injury, which opened the door for Pickens to make the most of his opportunities. To help paint a better picture, I want to dive deeper into the numbers of Pickens when Lamb was on and off the football field last year. And Lamb, when he missed a month of football between weeks 3 and 6, in that span, Pickens scored 96.7 fantasy points, which was nearly 33.3% of his production on the year, and he averaged 24.2 fantasy points per game. Now, that is a small sample size, I know that, but in the 12 games that Pickens and Lamb played together, Pickens saw that 24.2 fantasy points per game average drop to 16.1 fantasy points per game. Obviously, I'm not making the argument that Pickens is bad. I'm arguing that he might be closer to a T. Higgins archetype of a boom-bust, high-end wide receiver 2 than an actual true wide receiver 1 for fantasy football purposes, which is where he's currently being valued at in those startup drafts. And I think that there is room to capitalize on last season's performances to tier up into a safer floor wide receiver 1 with an easier to project future and target share. Now, if you're looking to tier up, I do think as we get closer and closer to that NFL draft, I would be trying to see if it's possible to throw a late 2026 first round pick, something in between that 108 to 112 range, or a late 2027 first on top of George Pickens to upgrade into that tier of wide receiver that consists of Amon-Ra St. Brown, Malik Neighbors, Justin Jefferson, and CeeDee Lamb. Now, the second player I think we could possibly tier up from here soon is going to be Luther Burden for the Chicago Bears. Looking at KTC, he is the wide receiver 16 in those rankings, currently a 5th round startup pick, and he's 22 years old, coming off of his rookie season. Played in 15 games last year, had 60 targets, 47 receptions, 652 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. Obviously, this was a different receiving core because there have been some changes here in Chicago. Luther Burden was one of the Dynasty community's biggest darlings down the stretch last season, and it seemed like the hype continued to grow and grow. And now we've seen DJ Moore get traded to the Buffalo Bills, which has Burden creeping into that top 15 wide receivers in a lot of people's rankings. The problem is there's a wide range of outcomes for Burden. Even with DJ Moore out of town, you still have an offense here with a negative pass rate over expectation in 2025, and you still have to project 2 former top 10 picks in Rome Odunze and Colston Loveland as legitimate threats to Burden's overall target share. That said, I am a believer in Burden's talent, but when you start to paint this picture, you can see that there is some risk for Burden, and you have to start asking yourself questions like, just how much better does Burden have to become to stand out in an offense like this with this level of target competition? I'd argue as talented as he is, he still likely ends up as the 3rd receiving option behind Rome and Loveland in Chicago when it's all said and done, and I'd see if it's possible to throw a late 2026 first, something in that 109 to 112 range, or a late 2027 first on top of Burden to try and upgrade into that Drake London and Teteroa McMillan tier, because I do think that those wide receivers are guaranteed to see anywhere between 110, 130 targets, somewhere in that range, where we can kind of project a safer floor and a much bigger role in an offense, despite it maybe being a little bit of a worse offense there in Atlanta or Carolina. Now, my last and final sell is going to be Christian McCaffrey at the running back position. Currently the running back 13 on Keep Trade Cut, going in the 4th round of startups, still today despite being 29 years old, going to be 30 at the start of the NFL season. Coming off of 2025, he played in 17 games. He had 300 plus rushing attempts, 1,200 rushing yards, 100 receptions out of the backfield for nearly 1,000 yards there, and 17 total touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey was dominant. The problem is Christian McCaffrey is in the danger zone as far as career carries and running back age cliff are concerned, and he's coming off of a year where, like I said, he saw 300 plus rushing attempts for the first time in his career, which is alarming given his injury history and after seeing his yards per carry fall to 2.9, which is the lowest it's been since 2020. Not to mention, a lot of the reason why CMC was able to produce so much in fantasy football last year was because he saw 100 plus receptions for the 49ers. But that might be a little bit more of a result of the Niners having guys like Ayuk, Pearsall, Kittle, and Jawan Jennings all miss multiple games throughout the year, leading to CMC really being the only receiving option for the Niners at times. I worry that this is the last time we might be able to sell CMC at top 12-ish running back prices, because any dip in production, whether it be fewer receptions with the additions of Mike Evans and a potential rookie in the 2026 NFL draft, or just an overall healthier receiving core resulting in less receiving work for CMC, or if you saw a further dip in efficiency on the ground, or heaven forbid we saw an injury, I do think the dynasty value could completely fall off for Christian McCaffrey, resulting in a missed sell opportunity here on CMC in his final days as a true dynasty RB1. I'd be trying to see if it's possible to throw a mid to late 2026 first. I'd go all the way up into that 106 range, probably somewhere between the 106 and the 109, or a 2027 first projected mid to late on top of CMC to see if I could upgrade into that Ashton Genty, Jeremiah Love, Omarion Hampton, or Devon Achane running back tier to try and reset the age clock on a high-end dynasty running back asset. So there you guys have it. Very simple, very easy. 3 guys in dynasty right now that I am looking to tier up from, because I do think that their dynasty value is in a weird spot where we could benefit from just adding a first-round pick on top of them to try and get us into a safer, easier to project tier of players. As always, if you found something today informative, do me the favor and hit that like button. It is the best free way to show this channel some support. We truly appreciate you guys showing some love on this channel. So thank you to you guys that do that for us. If you're not subscribed, go hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 10K subscribers by the end of the year, and go join our free Discord. We do have a free Discord linked in the description. With all of those things being said, I have nothing else for you guys today, so I will see you on our next episode. But until then, peace out.